This is the Sales Babble Podcast, episode 265, Return on Investment Buying, an interview with Frugalnomics' Tom Pisello.
Welcome to Sales Babble, the podcast that shares selling secrets for non-sellers. And now your host, Pat Helmers.
Welcome, Tom. Are you ready to babble?
I am, Patrick.
Tom, you got a new book out, right? The Frugalnomics Survival Guide, How to Use Your Unique Value to Market Better, Stand Out, and Sell More.
That's right. The labor of love, yeah.
So tell me, what Frugalnomics, what's that?
Yeah, so when the bubble burst on the economy, when the financial crisis hit, companies turned more frugal. Buyers changed, and they changed into a mantra we like to call cold as ice. I don't know if anyone is old enough to remember the song by Foreigner in the late 70s, but buyers are cold
I
as
do.
ice.
I was in college when it came out.
There you go. Well, I might have been a little older than that. But either way, buyers are in control, cautious, and economic focused now. And that's really changed how sellers have to engage with them. And just to talk about what that means. So buyers being in control, they've got a lot more choices available to them. There's a lot more solution variations. There's a lot more information that they can research and find on their own about you and your competition. So that's the in control part. The cautious part of ICE is that they've been burned. They've been burnt before. Many of these organizations have had projects go fail, purchase cycles that have been canceled. And as a result, they're much more skeptical of claims that vendors are making. And then economic focused. Finance is more involved. Purchasing is more involved in every decision. And there's just more stakeholders involved in general, 6 to 10 in a typical decision. And if you sell enterprise, it's more like 13 in a typical deal. So there is a much more heavier focus on the economics of every deal. What is the outcome? What's the return on investment? And how do we make sure that this project isn't just a project for the sake of a project, that it's actually going to have a bottom line impact on the organization?
Yeah, this has been a topic that's been common in Sales Babble recently, this whole idea that it's not about you, the seller. It's really about the buyer. How do buyers purchase? And I like the fact that you're thinking that way. Yeah,
and just to inform that a little bit more, buyers purchasing is broken. And that's probably the biggest opportunity that I'd like to get across, is that buyers have changed. But the other thing is that the buyer's journey is a broken one right now. Buying has de-evolved. Even though there's more of these choices to make, even though purchasing should be easier, it's not. There's more stakeholders, which makes things more complex just to gain consensus. But here's some statistics for you that I think will blow you away. The average buying cycle is taking 2 times longer than expected. So if they think they can get the purchase done in 6 months, it's actually taking 12. 84%, according to Gartner, are reporting a buying journey taking much longer than expected. And 94% of buyers have participated in a canceled buying journey. That means that they've gotten through some part of the cycle, a lot of times way into it. And we've had this happen to us. I'm sure every seller on this call has, where the deal just stalls. It stalls out. It ends in a do nothing as opposed to moving forward. And that's happening more and more often. So the journey has de-evolved completely. And buyers will admit that their process is broken. It's too hard to gain consensus, too hard to get approval. And a lot of times they're wasting a ton of effort on their side, just leading to a no decision.
They say your greatest competition is doing nothing.
Exactly. And that is definitely true. The statistics from Gartner and Forrester and the other researchers bear that out. And being an ex-Gartner guy, I definitely trust the research.
You buy into them.
Yeah.
But you're saying, too, you believe that the buying cycle has increased since the meltdown, the financial crisis of 2008, 2009?
Yes, absolutely. And Serious Decisions, another great analyst firm from ex-Gartner guys, John Neeson and Rich Eld, they report that it's 23% longer right now. So anywhere between 23% longer from Serious Decisions, Gartner indicates 2 times longer than buyers expect. Either way, those numbers aren't good. And this flies in the face of buying that's actually easier when you think about it. Many things now are purchased as a service. You just flip a button and it turns on. Configuration is more expedited. So it should be taking less, right? Especially they've got more information, more resources, e-commerce has come into play. So the journey should not be taking twice as long, 23% longer. It should be quicker, but instead it's gone the opposite way.
That's really interesting. The buying cycles. First, you said the buying cycle's getting longer, and secondly, the people that the leads that you get are colder than ever before.
Mm-hmm.
You would think it'd be the other way around.
Yeah, you would think, but unfortunately, it's not. So the whole thing is, okay, do we throw up our hands in despair and do nothing ourselves? No, obviously there are things that can be an advantage in an environment like this. And, the smart entrepreneurs, smart business people look for systems and processes that are broken. They look for the friction. They look for the issues. And if they're able to solve those issues, then that's where value is added. And this is where I think sellers have to think about is, how do we take this de-evolved buyer's journey, this broken buyer's journey, and how do we try to help fix it? How can we maybe take the friction out of the buyer's issues and the buyer's journey? And unfortunately, that's not what we see more and more. More and more, we see sellers having more territory than ever, more customers than ever. They tend to still show up and throw up, talking about their company, products and services, features and price, and not really focusing on what is ailing the buyer, which is they're overwhelmed with choices. They're overwhelmed with stakeholders that they don't know how to communicate the solution to effectively. And the buyer's journey is stalled. Instead, they're just selling the kind of same old way and really need to change.
What advice you got here? So why don't we maybe you could walk us through some things that maybe we can do, because the listeners here in Sales Babble, a lot of them are in the B2B space. This is something they struggle with all the time, trying
Absolutely.
to connect with the decision maker, trying to get a foot in the door. And then once they get in, it's very much like you said, it takes forever. What advice have you got for us?
Yeah, I don't go in and think you've got to tell them all about your company, the products and services. The first thing I would do is you've got to inspire the buyer. And there you've got to have content and an engagement that's relevant and that's going to get them to take action. Those who are familiar with the Challenger sale know that the Challenger methodology focused completely on this. How do we inspire buyers that are kind of stuck at status quo to change? And the way to do that is through emotion. You've got to get buyers to recognize pains that are so significant they need to address it, that the cost of doing nothing is untenable, that the emotion of risking their business, risking their career is so severe, sticking with the status quo, that they need to change and they need to step it up for their own career, to stave off the competition, and to gain the revenue or the efficiencies in the business that they need to ultimately survive. And here, the best advice is take a look at the pitch that you're using, take a look at the emails that you're using. If you're going in and you're saying in, let's say, that reach out email to a customer, hey, I want to talk to you about this new product that we have and all of the things that it can do. Or you're walking in that room and you're doing a pitch, and the first 3 or 4 slides are your company, the history, how attractive your founders are, your logo tombstone page. Before you even get to the challenges that the buyer has and what you're seeing other companies experience, you're not going to get anywhere. It's all been there, done that, seen that information, and they tune you out. So the first thing that you have to do is you have to inspire. And you do that by teaching by providing insights, providing benchmarks, doing diagnostics, Socratic questioning, so that the buyer kind of gets through a self-realization of where they're broken and how much it's costing them every day. Does that make sense, Patrick?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of PowerPoint.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to me it just makes a whole lot more sense that when you come into the room, you'd be saying something along the lines like, I really appreciate you having me here, but, why did you agree to meet? I know we chatted some about some of the challenges you had before. Why did you want to meet? And then I would just be asking questions, lots of questions,
Yeah.
lots of questions.
And I think that today, though, there needs to be a little bit of a twist in that I don't think you're wrong in that, getting a PowerPoint up and then just talking about the company isn't going to work. No pitch. It's got to be a no pitch zone. However, just an endless series of kind of questions without providing any value in return isn't going to cut it anymore either. You can't go in and just say, hey, what's keeping you up at night? However, you can do more Socratic discovery in that, you get them you're asking questions that are getting them to think a little bit about, and getting them to self-realize, almost like a good therapist does.
Yes.
They question, well, how do you feel about that? What is that costing you? Well, and then after you do that, you can then provide some insights. Well, you said it costs you about $1 million for that legacy solution maintenance a year. On average, our customers are experiencing that same thing. It's about $2 million a year, or they're paying on average between 17 and 25%. So providing insights and asking the right kinds of questions in a Socratic format where they're having self-realization of what ails them, I think is critical.
Why don't you tell people what you mean by Socratic?
Yeah, Socratic is a method, Socrates, where you're basically asking discovery questions to gain insight into what the person is feeling or thinking. But the questioning is done in a format where it gets the listener, or it gets the person you're asking the questions of, to think deeply, to explore what certain things mean. So it's not just casual kind of questioning. The questioning is set up in a format so that it can get the prospect to realize the situation that they're in and to come to a self-realization about that situation.
Right. It's a guided conversation.
It is, correct. And it's guided by questions and then insights related to that questions that you can convey.
I'm a big fan of this.
Yeah. And then after the questioning, what you've got to do is kind of interact with them to co-create value, is what we refer to it as. So once you've emotionally connected to them and given them some insights, you've let them have some self-realization and discovery. The next step is to go now and co-create value to ultimately get into a mode of discovery with them, so that you're diagnosing their issues, and then you're figuring out exactly how your solution can apply to solving those specific issues, and then quantifying the value that could be derived from solving those issues. It can't just be a kind of a discovery of the issues and then solutions, but you actually have to justify the solutions to get at those economic focused buyers.
There's something I saw in your bio that you call yourself the ROI guy, and that's exactly what this is, right?
Exactly. It's getting in and quantifying the specific value that can be realized from the solutions. And there's 4 dimensions of value that typically like to have sales guide and co-create with the customer. That's how can we help to reduce the legacy costs that you have and get costs out of the system? So cost reduction and cost avoidance. Number 2, how do we help to improve the productivity of your people and the streamlining of the processes? 3 would be risk reduction. How do we help you to recognize the risks and reduce the risks in your business? things like security risk, downtime risk, compliance and regulatory risk. And then finally, the fourth dimension is how do we help you to grow your business, to grow the revenue and scale the business to support the growth? So those are the four dimensions where we advise sales reps to kind of discover value. What is it costing the company today? And then what can the solution specifically do to drive savings, productivity improvements, risk reduction, and business growth?
So you didn't speak about profit.
Profit is part of the revenue growth. So that is also part of it. And
Or
it
the
can also
cost,
be-
reducing cost.
Yeah, or the cost part. Exactly. That's what I was just going to say. So in one way, you could improve profit overall just by improving the top line and just generating more. So that'll add to more EBITDA, but also you can take cost out of the equation. And if you look at the math behind it, taking cost out of the equation contributes to the bottom line quicker than actually driving revenue growth. So even though most organizations strategically would like to grow revenue, the more that you can the more pedestrian, just help them avoid cost or improve productivity, the quicker your solution can actually generate ROI for the business.
Got it. I wonder if we could go back one step, maybe. Mm-hmm. Something you said earlier was it's about a cold call. How can we cold call people successfully and pique their interest in a way that they're willing to meet for a sales call?
Yeah, we've done a lot of analysis of this, and although most of my business at MediaFly and before that at the company I created, Elaine, focuses a lot more on the engagement. You can use some of these same techniques that we document in the book for reach outs and quote unquote cold calling. And the way to do that, I think, is you've got to add value to every engagement. You've got to teach, you've got to educate, and it's not about pitching, it's about purpose. So how do you communicate with someone who doesn't know you? Typically, if you can provide them with some insight they didn't know about, if you could provide them with some advice, although they don't trust you yet, they still see you as more advisory, less about pitching. That is really the key. And so when it comes to cold calling, can you cold call them with a diagnostic? Can you cold call them with a piece of research? Can you cold call them with insights? Can you cold call them with some competitive messaging or insights that they didn't know about? Maybe examples from a competitor or what the competitors are doing that they need to pay attention to. What you shouldn't do is shouldn't talk about the product. You shouldn't be pitching them on a solution because they're not going to organizations don't buy a solution per se. They want to connect on a problem and solving a pain. So it's all about focusing on the pain when it comes to reaching out in cold calls and how you can help them to maybe recognize a pain, become more educated about a pain they should be paying attention to, or understand how competitors have overcome pain and how you might have helped them to do that.
Of course, there's always the opposite side of pain. There's desire.
There is, but a lot of times in day-to-day, particularly in business to business, I'd say in business to consumer, it's definitely different. You can get people to connect on desires. But when it comes to business, we find that pain is the bigger focus. And when it comes to neuroscience and decision making, we find that folks move away from pain more so than they move towards gain. And that's been shown in study after study, documented really well in Think Fast, Think Slow by Daniel Pink. It's probably one of the most popular books that talked about decision making of the human brain and how decision science works. But definitely focusing on pain, I think, is better. Now, if you're selling more of a digital transformation type solution or service, there's definitely a little bit more focus lately on bigger outcomes and the end game and the end goal and the desires there. But again, I think for most of us in our positioning, Too often we go in thinking the buyer cares about the gain or the ROI, and they don't. They care more about what pains should I be prioritizing today? What pains do I have that I might not even know that you can educate me about? And how have others kind of solved those pains? And what's my competition doing is another big one that we like to hit on. And I think that when you think about cold calling, how can you nurture a relationship with somebody using this type of material as opposed to trying to get a call right away by pitching your product? And that's the fault that I see of many business development relationship folks is they like to talk about the product and like to talk about what it can do and how you need to jump on the phone to talk to them about it. And to me, it's more about building a relationship around the pains that the buyer might have and making it more consultative with them.
I agree, but I cannot get over, Tom. Like I got 3 of these today on LinkedIn. People connect with me on LinkedIn, and the first thing I get is 5 paragraphs.
I know.
About,
it's got to be short. It's got to be sweet. It's got to be emotional. Yeah.
And
instead
they've done
getting,
the thing is, they've done no discover with me. They don't know what I believe or not. They look at my title and they go, all of our customers have that title. He must be qualified.
Yeah, exactly. And I do think that's a part of it too. It's, reach out with some insights, some value add. If there's not a piece of value that you're delivering to that prospect, then you're never going to make that connection. And the other thing is do some discovery. One of the things we love to do is leverage diagnostic assessment tools in these outreaches. So providing tools as part of your outreach can sometimes be very, very valuable, particularly if those tools can help the prospect kind of self-discover, self-assess, self-benchmark themselves. Those tend to be very, very effective in outreach. And that's a kind of a questioning and a tool process.
So this doesn't have to be complex, does it?
No, it can be relatively simple as long as it's value add. And that's the whole thing is be consultative, be value add, don't pitch. So it's all about moving from pitch to purpose, from your product and your service to value and how you're going to add value to every interaction. And so when you're looking at that reach out or you're looking at your presentation, is it oriented that way? Is it consultative? Is it going to teach? Is it going to educate? Is it going to be a value added engagement and interaction? And if it's not, then it can't pass that sniff test, then don't send it. And that's unfortunately what I see in all of the outreaches that I get is it's mostly about pitching their product or their service when they don't even know, as you said, what challenges I might have and what's relevant to me.
I have a feeling it could care less about me. It just
exactly.
And that bothers me immensely.
Yeah.
Frugalnomics. I really like it. You were at a company called Elaine IAM and got acquired by Mediafly, I believe, right? I saw that
correct, yeah.
Actually, I saw that in my email before you and I met. I was digging through my email, and it happened like last fall sometime, right?
Yeah, it did. It did last November, and we were in a niche kind of market where we were creating return on investment, total cost of ownership, and diagnostic assessment tools and this value methodology. Mediafly is a sales enablement company, and they make tools to help sales reps find the right content and then present that content in a unique way and then track the effectiveness of that content. And so the combination of the companies provides a new way for sales reps to engage with customers in that last mile, that moment of truth, to have the right content presented and value-added content, and then to be able to track and analyze what's the most effective process and what's the most effective content, and then tune that so that next time you engage with a customer like the one you just did, it'll give you the recommendations for next steps, and it'll give you the best content and value add to deliver to that customer.
How can people...
And sales enablement is a hot space right now too. So we needed to kind of get into a bigger growth market.
Got it. And how can people find MediaFly?
Yeah, mediafly.com. And if you want to connect with me, I'm T. Pisello on LinkedIn, and also run a group, Value Marketing and Selling, that would love folks to join. And we publish the latest in decision science and the 3 buy buttons in the brain, and a lot of research to that group on LinkedIn. So it's a great one to join and participate in.
And you have a book.
I do. There's
People
a book,
can
the
find
Frugalnomics Survival Guide. And
people can buy that on
anyone,
Amazon, I assume.
Yeah, they can buy it on Amazon. But if you reach out to me and join the group and reach out to me, happy to provide complimentary copies.
Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll send those out to you, and just dialogue with me on LinkedIn, and we'll get you a free copy. We also have a new edition coming out called Evolved Selling. To go along with that de-evolved buying journey, you need to be an evolved seller. And so that new edition is going to be out in about a month or so. So we're getting rid of some of the older copies, and then the new book will be out before you know it.
Awesome. Tom, this has been really great.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick.
And next time you're in Chicago, we need to meet up for coffee or a beer or something.
You got it.
Thank you very much for visiting us here on Sales Babble. As Tom said, cold calling should be a process of teaching and not pitching. Start by sharing insights and advice. And if you remember, the 4 things that he mentioned was this idea of removing your legacy costs or cost avoidance. Second, improving the productivity of the people by streamlining their processes. Third, reducing risk at many levels. And we're talking like security, downtime, compliance, things like that. And then fourth, scaled growth, for having a growth revenue kind of mindset. If we can do these kinds of things, if we can speak in those kinds of terms, then we can create possibility in our prospects' minds, converting those prospects into buyers. To connect with Tom, you can find links to him in the show notes. And as he mentioned, if you reach out to him, you might be able to get yourself a free copy of the book. I have the book right in my hands right now, Frugalnomics. Oh my goodness, it's gorgeous. Unbelievably beautiful, really super useful, really explains things in a very powerful manner. But I mean, it is just like full color, just a really, really terrific. So I got links to the book on Amazon. Go out there and check it out. Got a question or a comment? Don't hesitate to reach out and connect with me. I am easy to find on the Sales Babble website. Click on the Babble Me button and I will get back to you. Or you can hit me up on LinkedIn. I am there all the time. That's all I've got for this week. Until next, take care, folks, and have a highly successful and profitable selling day.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Babble podcast. Find us at www.salesbabble.com.